Every time I walk into a Unity church, do you sort of feel when you walk into a new church like there's that coming home feeling? I remember that the first time I walked into a Unity church, it was the Unity Church in Austin, Texas, and I was going through all these things in my life, all these, divorce and lost a job and moving, life just kind of the life crumble. And a friend had invited me to visit this church. And my friend wasn't there the Sunday I went, but I remember going and I remember sitting in the back by myself and just crying through the whole thing. Like I went through like a box of tissues. Afterwards, I sucked it all in, went to the car, and then I cried for like another 15, 20 minutes. And I did that the first few times I went to the church. It was just so cathartic. It was so healing. And it's interesting because as I talk to people about their first experience, do you remember the first time you came into a Unity community? And did you have that feeling like, I can be myself here. I don't have to filter things in my head. I can be me. So it's an amazing experience. It feels good, doesn't it? To have that feeling. And so here I have been doing this. I've been involved in Unity for over 20 years. I've read the books. I've read the Fillmores and Butterworth and all the big names that we all read. And yet still, 20 years later, there is that question that pops up. And you know the question. When you tell someone that you go to a Unity church and they say, well, what's Unity? And I go, well, you ever have that feeling like, well, let's see, I should know that. I really should know that. It's kind of a hard thing to describe, isn't it? Because it's kind of an experience. It's not really easy to put labels around it. Charles and Myrtle's great-granddaughter, Connie Fillmore Bazzi, she talked about the challenge of trying to describe what Unity is. And here's how she says it. I love her words. She says, what is a religion, but not a religion? What is Christian, but not only Christian? What is a denomination and not a denomination? What honors individual difference while seeking universal similarity? In a word, unity. That's how she described it. And if you think back to the origins of our movement, when Charles and Myrtle Fillmore decided they wanted to start something, they didn't intend to start a religion or a denomination. It was a study group. It was a prayer group that met in their home. It was an opportunity to teach people about the miracles they'd experienced in their own life through understanding the principles that Jesus taught. So it wasn't intended to be a religion. It was intended to be an opportunity to come together and to share and to learn and to grow together. And Charles was one who was known for spending a lot of time in meditation. Some people would think he was asleep, but he's like, nope, I'm meditating. And in one of these deep meditations, the story goes that the name Unity popped up for him. And as soon as that word appeared for him, he knew that was what we're going to call this thing. How do you find a name that describes what we do in this movement? And so Unity is the name that came to him. So it has since been defined. There is an official answer, by the way. If someone asks you what Unity is, you want to know what the official answer is? There was a committee of ministers who met for a very long time to come up with this sentence to answer that question, what is unity? And what they came up with is the official answer: unity is a positive, practical approach to Christianity. That's the official answer. It is an approach to Christianity that does not require you to call yourself a Christian. It's an approach to the teachings of Jesus that is inclusive of all faith traditions. And when I led my church back in Texas, we had Buddhists and Jewish people and Catholics and Baptists and atheists and agnostics, and it was a wonderful mix of traditions, and we pulled from all the best. The prayer candles from the Catholics, and everyone's like, bring your thing that you like to do, because we believe there is one power and one presence. There is that golden thread that unites all of these traditions, and that's what unity is here to encompass. So every now and then, I think it's kind of fun and important to review what is that positive, practical approach that we call unity. We have 5, sometimes we call them the basic teachings, although They may be basic, but that doesn't mean they're easy to live. They take some practice, and therefore they're worth repeating from time to time. If you have not read the book by Ellen Davenport, The 5 Principles, it's a great and short way to get familiar with the 5 foundational teachings that we talk about in Unity. So I thought we'd kind of review, a little refresher course. That sound good? Good, that's what we're talking about. So here's the refresher on the 5 Unity principles. So principle number 1, God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere. So take a deep breath in just to kind of let that resonate through every cell. One power, one presence, known by many names, but it's the same no matter what you call it. One power, one presence. So what does that mean to us if there is only one power and one presence? Well, first of all, it means the devil did not make me do it. Can't go there, because to believe in an evil power is to believe in duality, and this is a message of oneness. It's unity, one power, one presence. There is no opposing evil power. Now, that being said, does evil exist? So we would say in Unity, does darkness exist? Darkness is real, but it has no power that light can't overcome. And so that is the core teaching. There is one power, and that power is good. And in the midst of what we might call evil, and you look around in the world, and there's plenty of things to point at and say, I can't call that good. But we can say that's the darkness, that's the absence of light. And when we bring light into those places, we bring God into those places. So that is the first principle. And I have a friend of mine back in Evergreen. She travels to Africa every year to teach farmers how to have sustainable agriculture practices. And one of the things she noticed when she was visiting this community of farmers was that all the children that were born with disabilities or who had some kind of, something wrong with them, they were all ostracized from the community. If they were born with a birth defect, they were never included in the community, because the belief there was that if you were born with a birth defect, it must mean you had an evil spirit living in you, or that you were somehow cursed, and nobody wanted to be with these children. And so they didn't get to play with the other kids. They didn't get to socialize with the other kids. So my friend Carol decided, here's what we're going to do. When I go back to Africa, we're going to build a playground. And it's going to be for these children, these special needs children, these children that are in wheelchairs, these children. It's a playground for disabled children, and it's going to be open to everybody. And it's going to be the best place in town. The idea is, let's shift the paradigm, because it's easy if you believe in a theology of duality where there's good and there's bad, to see here's us and them, and there's the good and the evil, and we don't want to associate with the evil. But isn't it amazing how once you get to know that which we call evil, how we see that we're all the same? And so that's her intention, is like, let's get people together so they can see these kids are as much God as you and I. That there is one power and one presence, and it expresses equally through all of us. And that leads us into principle 2. So if we're going to buy principle 1, these all build on each other. If we're going to say, okay, there is one power, one presence, then what does that mean? That means God must be present within us. So principle number 2 states, we are spiritual beings created in God's image. The Spirit of God lives within each person. Therefore, all people are inherently good. So if God is all, then it doesn't stop here and start right there. I've heard it said in my Unity teachings that God isn't in us like a nut in a muffin, or like a chocolate chip in a cookie. God isn't in us like that. That God is in us like the ocean is in the wave, so that we are connected. It doesn't stop here and start here. If God is all, then that means we're it too, in every cell of our being. So that's principle number 2. Charles Fillmore, back in the 1920s, used to host a radio show. And he would bring in people of all different denominations. And it was said that Charles Fillmore never lost a debate because he never failed to love his opponent. He loved that people brought in different ideas. He loved that they challenged him on what he believed, because it would either open him to a new way of seeing things, or it would affirm to him what he already thought to be true. And so he loved having people come and challenge him like that, because he saw that there was God in all of it. So that's the second principle, that we are not separate from that one power and that one presence, which is fabulous. Good news, right? All right, so if God, there's one presence, one power, and that presence expresses through us, that means that the creative power that is God is existing within us as our own potential. So principle number 3 says we create our life experiences through our way of thinking, that our thoughts are how we take this creative power and we direct it into reality. I am, back in Evergreen, a Girl Scout troop leader. So with my Girl Scout troop, one of the things that they did last spring was they decided they wanted to do a fundraiser for the local animal shelter. So we got together and they all baked these little dog treats and decided they were going to sell them after school one day. So I went to the school right before, all the kids came out, and I set up the table and got all the little dog treats out. And then I had all this time before the kids came out. So I'm just kind of hanging out at the school, and I'm there in the lobby where there's this big doorway that leads to all the classrooms. And I'm looking around, and I saw this sign that I had never seen before. And I love this because it really speaks to Principle 3 to me. So here over the door to all the classrooms where all the children walk every single day was a sign that said this: when you enter this classroom, you are scientists, you are authors, you are important, you are leaders, you are explorers, you are readers, you are thinkers, you are creators, you are a friend, you are loved. You are the reason we are here. Can you imagine as a young child going in every day and having that thought in your head? You're magnificent, you're important. Your teachers are here because of their love for you and the potential they see in you. And how important for the teachers as they walk into their classrooms to have that thought running through their mind as they work with these young people. And I thought, what would the sign be when you walk into a Unity sanctuary? When you walk into this place, do you feel it? That there is a thinking here. That just by nature of walking into this place, when you enter this sanctuary, you are what? What do you feel? Blessed. Loved. Oh, yeah. When you walk, accepted. Oh, yes. You feel it like it bubbles up. When you walk into the sanctuary, do you feel that when you walk into this space, that that's how you're seen? And when we hold that thought that that's how I'm seen, and therefore maybe that's true about me, it changes who we are. So that is the power of Principle 3. We create our life experiences through our way of thinking. And that leads us to Principle 4. Principle 4 says there is power in affirmative prayer, which we believe increases our connection to God. Now here's what happens. By the time you get to Principle 4, we're feeling pretty good, right? There's one power, there's one presence, and it's in me, and I'm good, and I can create through the power of my mind, and then we get to Principle 4. So anyone ever seen the movie Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey? So it's this movie about this guy, he's a news anchor, he loses his job, and he's spiteful. He's like, God, you can't be a God if this is happening to me. And so God comes and says, well, if you think this job is so easy, I'm going to give it to you. You get to be God this week. Congratulations, here are the reins, I'm taking a vacation. And so he finds himself with all the powers of God. And so what does he do with it? Well, the first thing he does is he realizes that he's got this tomato soup. He's like, I can part the red soup. I got that power, and he parts the soup. And then he gets back at his coworker who, he sabotages someone's career because they had sabotaged his. And he teaches his dog to use the toilet so he doesn't have to walk the dog anymore. And he gets a new car. I was like, I'm going to upgrade my car. And you think about this idea, and you see it in New Thought all the time. We get these ideas. I'm a powerful creator, so I'm going to create parking spaces, and it's going to be great. I'm going to manifest and visualize and do vision boards, and all those things are great. There's nothing wrong with that because it's practicing using that creative power, but it's not the full journey, and that's why this next principle is so important. Without a prayer and meditation practice, we just kind of get full of ourselves, you know? We let all these other principles just go to our head. Like, yes, I'm going to create and manifest, and it's all about me. But when we go into prayer and we go into meditation, we get out of our head and into our heart, what we begin to see is that these teachings are here for us to be of service. That if we know there is one power, if we know there is goodness in all, if we know that we have the power to create, then what does that mean? It means that when we see suffering, we can do something about it. It means that when we see scarcity, we can do something about it because we have that potential. And when we are centered in prayer and meditation and we feel that flow of love, we are called into service to something much greater than ourselves. Have you felt that? When we go into prayer. So that's why that piece is so important. You can't skip that. But when we have that practice, the final principle, the fifth principle, is really kind of logical. Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. We have to do something with it. Otherwise, what good is it? One of my favorite spiritual teachers, he was a visionary, was Buckminster Fuller. And one of the things he used to say, in one of his quotes, he said, "God to me, it seems, is a verb, not a noun, proper or improper, that God is not a thing, but God is an energy that moves." And I love that when I think in the context of the Bible saying God is love, and I'd always kind of thought of that as, God is love. It's something that you have, it's something that you feel. But I love the idea of love as a verb. God is love. God is the love we share. It's the love that we give, and it moves and it flows. So when we are feeling that oneness with God, we are expressing that through the things that we do. It's only natural that would be what we do. So in the book, The Five Principles, Ellen Davenport refers to God not as a being, but she refers to God as the ground of all being, sort of the animator of all verbs. God is that energy that moves us. So in the book of John, I love these scenes in the Bible where Jesus is just on the edge of exasperation with his disciples. This is one of those moments where Philip is there and he's trying to kind of piece all this together. He's trying to figure this out. And Jesus, he's probably very patient and a good teacher and all that. Can you imagine a better teacher? You'd think they would get it like pretty easily. So Philip says to Jesus, "Lord, show us the Father. Just show us God and we'll be satisfied. Can you just show us? Can I just see it?" And Jesus said to him, and I'm picturing this as with a heavy sigh and possibly an eye roll. "Have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still do not know me? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father," because we are one, right? Second principle. "How can you say, 'Show me the Father'? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I say to you, I do not speak on my own." It's that one power, that one presence. "But the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. But if you don't believe me because I say it, because it's in your head, because it's in your heart, if you don't believe me just because I said it, then believe me because of the works themselves, because of what you've seen me do, because of how this knowledge expresses in the world. Believe me because of the works themselves. And truly I tell you, the one who believes in me, mind aligned, heart aligned, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do." Because you can't think that way and feel that way and not do the works. And in fact, will do greater works than these. So those are all five principles, all wrapped up in one. One power, one presence, present within us, active through us. We center it in prayer meditation so that we can use it for our highest good, and then we go do something with it. So when Charles Fillmore was asked to explain what is unity, here's how he put it. He said, "Unity is a link in the great educational movement inaugurated by Jesus Christ. Our objective is to discern the truth in Christianity and prove it. The truth that we teach is not new, neither do we claim any special revelations or discoveries of new religious principles. Our purpose is to help and teach humankind to use and prove the eternal truth taught by the Master." It's nothing new. We're just here to teach it and to prove it so that people can know that oneness? Would you say, as you look into our world right now, that you see some evidence of polarity, duality? If you really look hard, do you think you might find something? I think we're in a crisis now of people feeling separate, and it's manifesting in these ways that are really important. Things where, do you see how right now unity teachings are so important for the world? The idea of oneness, the goodness of all, bringing light into the dark places, it's so important right now. So David mentioned to me that you're doing the matching fund piece, and he mentioned to me that it's through the end of the month and you're 25% of the way there for your matching funds. So kudos to those of you who have given so far. I would say, and I pulled this from your mission statement, which I love seeing out in the hall. Your signs look amazing. Here in your bulletin, your mission: to inspire spiritual awakening and personal transformation. How many of you would say through this community you have experienced some form of spiritual awakening? Some form of personal transformation? Awesome. So you're living the manifestation of that mission. So my invitation in reference to this fifth principle: when you have experienced spiritual awakening, you will know that you really have experienced it because of the joy you will find in providing that same experience for others. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool? What if by the time David got back, the matching fund was done? What if he didn't have to talk about this next week? Wouldn't that be cool? So I'm going to issue just a general challenge for those of you that have not done a match. And again, this is above and beyond what you would normally give, but in the spirit of God is a verb. God is what we do. It's the love that we give. For those of you that are members of this community who have experienced spiritual awakening through this community, I figure, around 100 people given $125, that's a date night, right? And boom, you're there. So easy, right? So that's the challenge. I'm going to throw it out there, and then I'm going to go home and you won't see me again. So I'm just going to cross my fingers. I hope it sets you up good, David, for making next week easy for you. I will say, I did bring some of my books this week because I haven't been here in a while, and I am going to donate 50% of the proceeds to your matching fund. So if anyone doesn't have it and would like one, that is going to be my inspired action for you today. The Gallup organization does all kinds of polls, and one of the things that they study is religion and religious trends. And it's very interesting as you look to the next generation what the trends will tell you. This generation has been called Generation None. N-O-N-E, not N-U-N. N-O-N-E, none. Because when asked what religious denomination they affiliate with, a rising majority will say none. I don't affiliate with any of them. They're not into doctrine and creed, and many of us aren't either. That's why we're here, right? Because we're not into that. It has to be this way, and here's the rules and the structures. And so there's sort of this concern in religious circles that this new generation is not spiritual, that faith plays no part in their life. But the truth is, when you ask them about spirituality, they are just as engaged as generations ago. But what I suspect about them is that they have evolved to a point where they recognize that spiritual connection does not fit into a box. It doesn't fit into one particular set of rules. It's the awareness that Charles Fillmore had over 100 years ago, that there is a way, there is a path that transcends the doctrines and the creeds and brings us directly into communion. It's our oneness. They're not the nones, they're the ones. We believe in oneness. We believe in unity. That this is what Charles Fillmore taught, Myrtle Fillmore taught, and then thousands of years before that, it's actually what Jesus taught. Rise above the religious doctrine and realize and experience our oneness. So in closing, I brought an affirmation It is sort of my tribute to Bucky Fuller. It's our prayer for protection that you always say at the end of service. You know, the light of God surrounds us and the love of God enfolds us. A lot of Unity ministries will tweak that a little bit. And I know here you'll say it and you'll say, I am the light of God. I am the love of God. We do that because this prayer for protection, it's been around a long time. And the languaging in it is kind of dualistic. God protects me. So there's God and there's me. So we kind of try to tweak it a little bit. So I have tweaked it in a way to make it verb intensive. Thank you, Bucky Fuller. So this is our prayer for protection on verbs. Are you ready? Okay. Well, repeat it after me. The light I shine is the light of God. Light I shine is the light of God. The love I express is the love of God. The love I express is the love of God. The power of God is my power to be a force for good in the world. To be a force for good in the world. Wherever I am, God is, and all things are possible. And all things are possible.